Hello and welcome to another instructional video brought to you by ZappySys. In this video, we're going to cover how to use a custom ODBC Salesforce driver to consume data from the Salesforce cloud. As always, this is a custom component you'll be able to use once you download the ZappySys ODBC Power Pack, and you can get that directly from their website, hovering over Products, ODBC Power Pack, and download the free trial. And I'll be sure to add a link for this in the description below. Okay, so once you have the Power Pack installed on your machine, I'm going to just search for the Gateway Configuration tool. And I'm going to allow it to make changes. And up pops the Configuration tool. The first thing you'll want to do is hop over to the Users tab. And if you don't have any users created already, just add a login, make sure the password's the same, and you're going to need at least one administrator. I already have those two users, so I'm going to stick with those. And also be sure to go to the Network Settings tab and add a firewall rule so that other machines from the local network can reach the gateway on port 5000. There we go. Other than that, we'll just hop back over to the Data Sources tab and make a new data source. So I'm going to click Add. I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to pick the Salesforce driver and click Finish. And then you'll want to set up the connection. So the first time you have to go through this, you'll probably have to enter a username, password, security token, etc. I have a connection string copied to my clipboard, so I'm just going to paste that in there. And now I'll show you what the connection settings look like. So you'll see your username, your password, security token. If you're not sure what your security token is, you can use this little handy link to help you generate and retrieve it from the Salesforce portal. You'll want to specify your service type, whether it's production, sandbox, or you can say other and insert a URL. Say right now this is using version 48, but maybe you want to use a different version. You could specify that. All of the rest of the settings are pretty standard, but you have other things for like proxy settings, certificates, etc. But I'm just going to stick with this and I'm going to click OK. So that's really it for setting up a connection. Now we can just make sure that this config works. So I'll click the test connection button and there we go, it does. Great. But what data are we actually retrieving? Well, we can see that on the preview tab. So I'll hop over to that and you'll notice, hey, there's a very basic query that already populates. So I'll just hit preview data and we'll see up to 100 rows of this data. And there we go, we have some stuff. We can also use this drop-down menu to see all of the tables that are available. And now if I click the, let's say, account table, this is all of the columns that are available in the account table. So if I say preview data, now I'm going to see lots of columns for those 100 rows. If you'd like some help writing your query, you can use this little view examples link and you can see some other options. Or you can hop over to this examples tab, and here you can see a lot of helpful and interesting examples, especially for things like SOQL, which is Salesforce's own specific query language. And you can use these links here in these little info pieces for more specific SOQL information. So as you can see, there are a lot of examples for things like parent fields, child records, date time examples. But you'll notice some other features such as external input. So you can take data from an external source and insert it into the Salesforce connection that you have, or you can use it for an ODBC connection. You'll also notice these bulk API inserts and deletes. And these leverage an output setting which will display the data in the preview pane. You can use bulk mode, which uses job style bulk API features for performance. If you're in, let's say you're inserting millions of rows, that will definitely help with performance. If you're only dealing with 10 or 20,000 rows, you might not want to enable this feature. But what if we use an example to show how this works? So let's say we'll hop back over to the preview pane. We'll delete all of this. And I have some code in SQL Server already written. So I have a table called the SF Customers table, Salesforce Customers, and it has about 10,000 rows, just some sample demo data. So I'm going to copy the rest of that code and I'm going to paste it in the preview editor. So the first thing is we'll run this first line. And as you can see, if I highlight a line and then click preview, it only runs that line. So now we have 100 rows with some demo accounts. Okay, great. So I'm going to delete all the data for those demo accounts. And there we go. We can see the rows are deleted. And it says rows 1000, even though we have max rows set to 100. So, you know, we could change this max row setting up here, but I have this query just to make sure that all of the rows have been deleted. And there we go. There are 0 rows where the name is like demo account. So now we have this cool feature where we're going to insert data into Salesforce. And we're going to get it from this source clause where we have to specify 3 options. One is our connection type or our driver. So we're using Microsoft SQL Server. But you could use, say, ODBC, and you could type in DSN equals and your data source name or whatever your connection string is. So the first one is the driver, the second one is the connection string, and the third field is your external query. So I'm getting that data from our SF customers table in my SQL Server instance. And then we have those other features. So we have output enabled, so we should see the data visible in this little preview pane down here. And we have the bulk mode disabled. We're not using that many rows, but you know, like I said, if you're using millions of rows, you might want to enable this feature. So now let's just run this entire insert statement. And there we go. We see 1,000 rows inserted, and we see the status down here because we have output enabled. That's how easy it is to read data from a SQL Server instance and then insert that data into the accounts table in Salesforce. So when we're done with all this configuration, we can just say okay, and there we go. Now our ODBC driver is saved for the future use. That's how easy it is to use the custom ZappySys Salesforce ODBC driver to read data from Salesforce and even push data to it from an external data source. Okay, so we've already covered how to create a gateway connection, how to create a user account for the gateway, how to make sure the firewall settings are configured, and how to connect to an API data source. Now let's see how to use the data from this particular gateway in a report in SSRS. I already have a report services project in Visual Studio, so I'm just going to open that up. And I'll just create a new report. So I'm going to use the wizard and click Next. We'll call this data source name data source 1. That sounds good. Type SQL Server. We'll edit the connection. So don't forget we used localhost on port 5000. We're using the SQL Server authentication, and we're using the user we created in the gateway. And don't forget, our gateway is called ZS Gateway. So we're going to test the connection. It works. Awesome. So we'll say OK. We'll say OK. We'll click Next. And we'll stick with our same customers table. We want a tabular report. And we'll use all the columns. We'll say Next. Report name, report 1, sure. We'll click Finish. And just like that, you see report 1 is created. We have our data source is created with the connection string. It looks good. So let's just preview the output of the report. And there we have it. There's the data from that API connection. We could refresh this, and don't forget this is a live connection to that API, so every time we refresh it, we're getting brand new data. I mean, we could do some other configuration or cosmetic tweaks to this report, obviously, but it's ready for deployment if that's what you would want to do with it. I mean, that's it. That's how easy it is to retrieve data from an API source with the custom ZappySys gateway service and then use it in SSRS. If you want to give it a try, but you haven't already downloaded the ODBC Power Pack yet, go ahead and do that now. Don't forget the link is in the description below. And be sure to subscribe to the ZappySys YouTube channel to get more tips and tricks like this and other updates in the future.